Chapter 1. A Delicate Mission. The Galactic Union had long maintained peace among its member species, a delicate balance that required careful negotiation and diplomacy. For centuries, the Union had ensured that no one species dominated another, and each was given an equal voice. The position of diplomat was one of the most respected roles within the Union, reserved for those with the sharpest minds and the steadiest hands. Among these diplomats was Envoy Lirvani, a member of the Illyrian species. The Illyrians were known for their grace and eloquence, their silken voices able to soothe even the most heated disputes. Lirvani was young by her species' standards, yet she had already made a name for herself within the Union. Her calm demeanor and gentle presence were her most powerful tools, allowing her to diffuse tension with ease. But this mission was different. The Union had recently extended an invitation to a species that had long been isolated from the wider galaxy: humanity. The humans were a wild card, a species that had rapidly advanced from primitive beginnings to spacefaring status in a mere few centuries. Their home planet, Earth, was a place of extremes, where conflict and cooperation seemed to walk hand in hand. Lirvani had been selected to represent the Union in the first official diplomatic meeting with the humans. It was a great honor, but also a daunting task. Humanity's reputation preceded them. They were known for their unpredictable nature, their fierce independence, and their capacity for violence. While the Union's council believed that humans could be valuable allies, there were those who feared what might happen if they were provoked. As Lirvani prepared for the mission, her thoughts were clouded with anxiety. She had studied everything she could about humans, their culture, their history, their physiology, but nothing could fully prepare her for the reality of meeting one face to face. The Illyrian diplomat had always been sensitive to the emotions of others, and she worried about how she would handle the raw intensity that humans were said to exude. The transport vessel hummed quietly as it approached the designated meeting point, a neutral space station orbiting a distant star. Lirvani sat in her quarters, practicing the breathing exercises that had been taught to her as a child. She needed to maintain her composure, to project an image of calm authority. The Union's hopes for a peaceful alliance rested on her shoulders. The door to her quarters slid open with a soft hiss, and Lirvani looked up to see her assistant, an Andoran named Kira. The Andorans were a species known for their efficiency and practicality, and Kira was no exception. Her short, angular frame moved with purpose as she entered the room. "Envoy Lirvani," Kira said, her voice crisp and formal. "We will be arriving at the station within the hour. The human delegation is already en route." Lirvani nodded, rising gracefully from her seat. "Thank you, Kira. Are all preparations complete?" "Yes, Envoy. The meeting chamber has been prepared according to your specifications. The human representative will be meeting with you alone, as requested." The Illyrian diplomat sighed softly, a small tremor of apprehension running through her. "And the security measures?" "All precautions have been taken. The station's personnel are on high alert, and our own guards are stationed nearby. However, the human representative has agreed to leave their weapons on their ship as per the Union's protocol." Lirvani felt a small measure of relief at that. Humans were known for carrying weapons, even in situations where other species would find them unnecessary. It was a custom that unnerved many within the Union, though the humans claimed it was simply a precautionary measure. "Very well," Lirvani said, forcing a smile. "Let us proceed." As the transport vessel docked with the station, Lirvani took one last look at herself in the reflective surface of the wall. Her pale lavender skin was flawless, her silver eyes steady. She had chosen a flowing robe of deep indigo, the color signifying peace and diplomacy in Illyrian culture. The shimmering fabric draped elegantly over her slender form, accentuating her grace. Taking a deep breath, Lirvani exited her quarters, Kira following close behind. The walk to the meeting chamber was short, but each step felt heavy with anticipation. When they reached the chamber's entrance, the door slid open to reveal a large, circular room bathed in soft light. A single table sat in the center with two chairs on opposite sides. Lirvani entered the chamber and took her seat, her heart pounding in her chest. She had faced countless negotiations in her career, but none had filled her with such apprehension. The humans were an unknown quantity, and the thought of what might happen if the meeting went poorly was enough to make her second-guess every decision she had made. Moments later, the door on the opposite side of the chamber opened, and the human representative entered. Lirvani's breath caught in her throat as she looked up at the towering figure before her. The human was taller than she had expected, with broad shoulders and a muscular build. His skin was a warm, sun-kissed brown, his dark hair cut short and neatly groomed. But it was his eyes that struck her the most, intense, piercing, and filled with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. The human approached the table and extended a hand, a gesture that Lirvani recognized as a sign of greeting in human culture. She hesitated for a moment before reaching out to take his hand, her fingers trembling slightly as they made contact. His grip was firm, almost too firm, and she could feel the strength in his hand. "Envoy Lirvani, I presume," the human said, his voice deep and resonant. "I'm Commander Marcus Steele, representing Earth and the United Human Nations. It's an honor to meet you." Lirvani managed to smile, though it felt strained. "The honor is mine, Commander Steele. Welcome to the Galactic Union." As they released hands and took their seats, Lirvani couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled over her. She had met representatives from countless species, but none had ever made her feel so small, so vulnerable. The humans were unlike anything she had ever encountered, and she couldn't help but wonder if the Union had made a grave mistake in inviting them into their fold. Chapter 2. Cultural Collision. The air in the meeting chamber felt thick with tension as Envoy Lirvani and Commander Marcus Steele settled into their respective seats. The table between them, though unremarkable in appearance, seemed like a barrier that neither of them wanted to cross. Lirvani, accustomed to the more reserved and subtle expressions of the species within the Galactic Union, found herself unsettled by the human's straightforward demeanor. Commander Steele's presence was imposing, not just because of his physical stature, but because of the way he carried himself. His every movement was deliberate, confident, almost as if he was ready to leap into action at any moment. Lirvani had read about the human propensity for decisiveness and action, but experiencing it firsthand was a different matter entirely. She began with the customary greeting in her native tongue, the Illyrian language, which was known for its melodic and soothing tones. "Felari Urana Tolwe, Commander Steele. May your spirit find peace and your journey be prosperous." Commander Steele inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the greeting. "Thank you, Envoy. I appreciate the sentiment." His words were polite, but his tone carried a hint of impatience, as if he was eager to move past the formalities. Lirvani straightened, determined to maintain control of the conversation. "As representatives of our respective peoples, it is our duty to foster understanding and cooperation. The Galactic Union extends its hand in friendship, in the hope that humanity will join us in mutual respect and shared prosperity." Steele nodded, though there was a glint in his eyes that Lirvani couldn't quite decipher. "We humans are very interested in cooperation, Envoy, but we're also realists. We believe in strength, in being prepared for any eventuality. I hope you can understand that." The diplomat's mind raced as she tried to interpret the subtext of Steele's words. Humanity's reputation for militarism was well known, and it was a subject of concern among many within the Union. Lirvani had been briefed extensively on the subject, but she had hoped that the reality would be less intimidating than the reports. Now, faced with the human's unwavering gaze, she wasn't so sure. "Of course," Lirvani replied carefully. "The Union respects the sovereignty and unique qualities of all its member species. We understand that each has its own way of ensuring its security and stability." Steele leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving hers. "That's good to hear, because while we humans are open to peaceful relations, we're also very protective of our own. We've learned through our history that peace often needs to be backed up by strength." The words hung in the air, and Lirvani felt a chill run down her spine. There was something about Steele's tone that was both reassuring and threatening. It was as if he was saying that humanity would gladly befriend the Union, but only on their own terms. The Illyrian diplomat had to remind herself that this was only the first meeting, and that there was still much to learn about these newcomers. Strength is a valued trait in many species, Lirvani said diplomatically. But the Union believes that true strength comes from unity and cooperation. Together, we can achieve much more than we ever could alone. Steele smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. Agreed. But unity and cooperation don't mean much if you can't protect what you've built. That's something we've had to learn the hard way. Lirvani's mind flashed to the reports of humanity's turbulent history, wars, conflicts, and struggles that had shaped their development. The Illyrians had evolved in a much more peaceful environment, where conflict was rare and cooperation was the norm. It was clear that humanity's experiences had left a deep imprint on their psyche, one that valued strength as much as, if not more than, peace. The diplomat decided to steer the conversation toward safer ground. Perhaps you could share more about humanity's goals within the Union, Commander Steele. What are your aspirations as a potential member? Steele seemed to relax slightly, though his expression remained guarded. Our main goal is to ensure the safety and prosperity of our people. We want to explore, to learn, to expand our knowledge of the universe. But we also want to make sure that we're not taken advantage of. We've come a long way in a short time, and we're not about to let anyone push us around. Lirvani nodded, her mind working to find the right words. The Union values exploration and the pursuit of knowledge as well. We believe that by sharing our discoveries and resources, we can all benefit. And what about military alliances? Steele asked, his tone becoming more direct. Are you expecting us to disarm or reduce our defenses as a condition of joining? The question caught Lirvani off guard. She had anticipated discussions about trade, technology, and cultural exchange, but not this. It was clear that for humans, security was a top priority, perhaps even more so than diplomacy. The Union does not impose disarmament on its members, Lirvani replied, choosing her words carefully. However, we do encourage peaceful resolution of conflicts and the reduction of military tensions. Our goal is to create an environment where all species feel secure without the need for excessive armament. Steele's gaze hardened. We're not interested in giving up our defenses, Envoy. We learned a long time ago that the best way to avoid conflict is to be ready for it. We can talk about peace all we want, but at the end of the day, it's our ability to defend ourselves that keeps us safe. Lirvani felt her heart sink. The gap between their perspectives was wider than she had anticipated. The Illyrians, like many species in the Union, had moved beyond the need for extensive military forces, relying instead on diplomacy and mutual respect to maintain peace. But for the humans, it seemed that strength and security were inseparable. She decided to approach the issue from a different angle. I understand your concerns, Commander. Perhaps we can find a way to address them while also fostering the spirit of cooperation that the Union stands for. After all, our shared goal is the safety and prosperity of all our peoples. Steele studied her for a moment before nodding slowly. Maybe. But understand this, Envoy. We're not just another species looking to join the club. We bring a lot to the table, and we're not going to settle for anything less than full respect and recognition of our strengths. Lirvani offered a conciliatory smile. Of course, Commander. The Union values the unique contributions of all its members. We look forward to learning from humanity's experiences and working together to build a brighter future. The meeting continued for some time, with the two representatives discussing various topics ranging from trade agreements to cultural exchanges. But the underlying tension never fully dissipated. Lirvani could feel it in every word, every glance that Steele gave her. The humans were a force to be reckoned with, and they knew it. As the meeting drew to a close, Lirvani couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a long and challenging journey. The humans were unlike any species the Union had encountered before, and their integration into the fold would not be easy. But if they could find a way to bridge the gap between their perspectives, there was no telling what they could achieve together. Chapter 3. The Limits of Diplomacy. Days passed after the initial meeting, with Lirvani finding herself more immersed in the complexities of human culture than she had anticipated. The humans were, without question, a species of contrasts. They were capable of great kindness and cooperation, but also of fierce independence and aggression. It was this duality that both fascinated and unnerved her. Lirvani spent hours poring over the reports from the Union's cultural analysts, trying to find a way to approach the next round of talks with Steele. The Illyrian diplomat had always prided herself on her ability to connect with others, to find common ground where none seemed to exist. But with the humans, the task was proving more difficult than she had imagined. The reports painted a picture of a species that had been forged in the fires of conflict. Humanity's history was one of survival against overwhelming odds, of triumph and tragedy in equal measure. Their rapid technological advancement had been driven by necessity, their resilience honed by centuries of struggle. It was no wonder that they valued strength so highly. It was a trait that had kept them alive. But it was not just their history that concerned Lirvani. The reports also highlighted the humans' unique psychological makeup. They were a species prone to intense emotions, to passion and impulsivity. While this made them creative and adaptable, it also made them unpredictable. The Union's analysts warned that humans could be quick to anger and difficult to placate once provoked. Lirvani sighed as she set the reports aside. She had hoped to find a clear path forward, but the more she learned, the more complicated the situation seemed. The humans were not like the other species of the Union, who valued harmony and cooperation above all else. They were driven by a different set of values, ones that emphasized individualism and self-reliance. The next meeting with Steele was scheduled for the following day, and Lirvani knew she needed to approach it with a different mindset. She could not rely on the same diplomatic strategies that had served her well in the past. If she was going to succeed, she would need to find a way to meet the humans on their own terms. When the time came, Lirvani entered the meeting chamber with a renewed sense of purpose. Steele was already there waiting for her. His expression was as unreadable as ever, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes that Lirvani couldn't quite identify. "Commander Steele," Lirvani greeted him, inclining her head slightly. "Envoy Lirvani," Steele replied, his tone courteous but guarded. The two sat down at the table, the atmosphere between them charged with unspoken tension. Lirvani decided to take a more direct approach this time, hoping to cut through the formalities and get to the heart of the matter. "I've been giving a lot of thought to our last conversation," Lirvani began, folding her hands neatly in her lap. "And I believe it's important for us to address the differences in our perspectives openly and honestly." Steele raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "I'm listening." "The Union values peace and cooperation above all else," Lirvani continued. "But I understand that for humanity, security and strength are paramount. These are not necessarily opposing values, but they do require us to find a balance that respects both of our approaches." Steele nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "I agree, but that balance can't come at the expense of our security. We've fought too hard to get where we are." "I understand that," Lirvani said, her tone gentle but firm. "And I believe the Union can offer humanity a way to achieve that security without compromising our shared values. We have technologies and resources that could greatly enhance your defenses, and in return, we ask for your cooperation in maintaining peace within the Union." The human commander leaned forward slightly, his gaze intense. "And what about military alliances? How does the Union feel about that?" Lirvani took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "The Union encourages collaboration between its members, including in matters of defense. However, we do not support aggressive militarism or the use of force as a first resort. Our goal is to create a network of mutual support, where all species feel safe and protected, without the need for constant conflict." Steele seemed to consider her words for a moment before responding. "That sounds reasonable in theory. But what happens if one of your members decides to act against us? Will the Union step in to protect humanity, or will we be left to fend for ourselves?" Lirvani felt a pang of frustration. It was clear that Steele was testing her, probing for any sign of weakness or hesitation, but she refused to be intimidated. The Union is committed to ensuring the safety of all its members, including humanity. If any member were to act aggressively, the Union would intervene to prevent conflict and protect the innocent. And if that intervention requires the use of force, Steele pressed. Lirvani hesitated, aware that her next words could shape the future of humanity's relationship with the Union. The use of force is always a last resort, but we do not shy away from it when necessary. Our priority is to maintain peace, but we recognize that peace must sometimes be defended. Steele studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he nodded. I can respect that. But understand this, Envoy. Humanity won't rely on anyone else for our protection. We'll cooperate with the Union, but we won't give up our right to defend ourselves. Lirvani smiled, though it was tinged with sadness. I wouldn't expect you to, Commander. But I hope that in time humanity will come to see the Union as more than just an alliance of convenience. We believe in building a future where all species can thrive together, without the constant fear of war. Steele's expression softened slightly, though his guard remained up. We'll see, Envoy. For now, let's focus on finding common ground. The rest of the meeting proceeded more smoothly, with both parties working to outline potential areas of collaboration. There were still many challenges ahead, but Lirvani felt a small glimmer of hope. Steele was not as inflexible as she had feared, and there was a possibility that they could find a way to bridge the gap between their respective cultures. But as the meeting drew to a close, Lirvani couldn't shake the feeling that the true test was yet to come. Humanity's integration into the Union would not be easy, and there would be many obstacles along the way. But if they could find a way to work together, the potential for growth and progress was immense. Chapter 4. A Fragile Understanding. The final meeting between Envoy Lirvani and Commander Marcus Steele took place in a more informal setting, a private dining area aboard the space station. The atmosphere was more relaxed, with both representatives seated across from each other at a smaller, round table. The station's automated servers had prepared a meal that blended Illyrian and human cuisine, a symbolic gesture meant to highlight the potential for cultural exchange. Lirvani appreciated the gesture, though she found herself more focused on the conversation that lay ahead. The previous meetings had been productive, but there were still unresolved issues that needed to be addressed. She knew that this final meeting would be crucial in determining the future of humanity's relationship with the Galactic Union. Steele, for his part, seemed more at ease than before. He had shed the formal military attire in favor of a simple shirt and trousers, though his bearing remained every bit the seasoned commander. Lirvani found his presence less intimidating now, though she remained cautious. The human had proven to be both astute and formidable in negotiations, and she knew better than to underestimate him. Envoy Lirvani, Steele began, raising a glass of amber liquid in a toast, to new beginnings. Lirvani raised her own glass, filled with a light, effervescent Illyrian beverage. To new beginnings, she echoed, clinking her glass against his. The two drank in silence for a moment, the tension between them easing slightly. It was a small step, but Lirvani took it as a positive sign. The human had come a long way since their first meeting, and she hoped that they could continue building on the progress they had made. I have to admit, Steele said, setting his glass down, I didn't know what to expect when I was assigned to this mission. The Union seemed like a far-off concept, something we humans couldn't fully grasp. But after meeting you and learning more about your people, I think there's potential for something good here. Lirvani smiled, relieved to hear his words. I'm glad to hear that, Commander. The Union has been watching humanity's progress with great interest, and we believe that your species has much to offer. But we also understand that building trust takes time. Steele nodded, his expression thoughtful. Trust is something we've had to learn the hard way. We've been through a lot, and we've come to rely on ourselves to get through tough times. But I can see the value in what the Union is offering. It's just different from what we're used to. Change can be difficult, Lirvani agreed, but it can also lead to growth. The Union was founded on the principles of cooperation and mutual respect, and we've seen firsthand how much stronger we are when we work together. I believe that humanity can thrive within the Union if you're willing to embrace those principles. The human diplomat leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady. I'm willing to try, Envoy, but there are still concerns back on Earth, especially regarding security. My people want to know that we won't be forced into a situation where we're vulnerable. Lirvani nodded, understanding the importance of his words. The Union does not seek to make any of its members vulnerable. On the contrary, we believe that by working together, we can create a safer galaxy for all species. But I understand that trust must be earned, not given. Steele smiled, a hint of warmth in his expression. You're right about that, and I think we're on the right track. But there's one thing I want to be clear about. Humanity won't compromise on our right to defend ourselves. We may be new to the galactic stage, but we're not naive. Nor would I expect you to be, Lirvani replied, her tone respectful. The Union values the strengths of all its members, and we recognize that humanity's determination and resilience are assets, not liabilities. We are not asking you to give up your right to self-defense, only to work with us in a way that benefits everyone. The conversation continued in this vein, with both parties carefully navigating the complex issues at hand. Lirvani found herself increasingly impressed by Steele's insight and pragmatism. While he was clearly protective of his people, he was also open to finding common ground, something that boded well for the future. As the meal drew to a close, Lirvani felt a sense of cautious optimism. The path ahead would not be easy, but she believed that they had laid a solid foundation for future cooperation. The Union and humanity might have different approaches to security and diplomacy, but they shared a common goal, the pursuit of peace and prosperity for all. Steele stood, offering his hand once more. This time, when Lirvani took it, she did so with a genuine sense of connection. Thank you, Envoy. I look forward to seeing where this goes. And I as well, Commander, Lirvani replied, her voice filled with sincerity. May our future be one of friendship and mutual respect. As Steele departed, Lirvani allowed herself a moment of reflection. The mission had been challenging, but it had also been a valuable learning experience. She had come to understand humanity's perspective more deeply, and in doing so, had found a way to bridge the gap between their worlds. But as she left the dining area and returned to her quarters, Lirvani knew that the real work was just beginning. The road to integration would be long and fraught with obstacles, but she was determined to see it through. For the sake of the Union and for the promise of a better future, she would continue to build the fragile understanding that had begun between their species. And in time, she hoped that understanding would grow into something far stronger, a true alliance that would benefit not just humanity and the Union, but the entire galaxy.